I was 40 feet up on scaffolding, wearing a hard hat covered in concrete dust, when my phone rang. The crew boss yelled something about not taking personal calls on the job, but I saw the 415 area code, San Francisco, and something in my gut said, answer it. Nobody from San Francisco ever called me. I grew up in Denver, lived in Denver my whole life. The only connection I had to San Francisco was family I'd never met, family that wanted nothing to do with me. Jake Martinez, I answered, shouting over the sound of jackhammers and drilling. Construction sites aren't quiet. Mr. Martinez, this is Howard Chen, calling from Chen and Associates. I'm an attorney representing the Chen family estate. I'm calling regarding a matter of some urgency. Is this a good time to talk? No, it absolutely wasn't. I was in the middle of a 12-hour shift on a high-rise project downtown, but something about the formal tone, the careful words made me climb down the scaffolding anyway. I told my crew boss I needed 15 minutes, got the usual complaints, and walked to the parking lot, where it was marginally quieter. I'm here. What's this about? Mr. Martinez, I'm very sorry to inform you that your cousin, Brandon Chen, passed away 6 days ago in an automobile accident. I stopped walking. Brandon Chen. I'd never met him, never even seen a photo that I could remember, but I knew who he was. The golden boy, the heir, the cousin who had everything I didn't. Wealth, education, opportunity, family. The one who was everything I'd never be because my mother had committed the unforgivable sin of marrying my father. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it, despite never knowing him. Death is death. 27 years old. Yeah, I knew his age because my mum had mentioned it once, was too young to die. But I don't understand why you're calling me. Mr. Martinez, Brandon was the primary beneficiary of the Chen Family Trust, established by your grandfather, William Chen, in 1985. The trust is valued at approximately $50 million. 50 million? The number hung in the air. $50 million. More money than I'd make in 10 lifetimes doing construction. More money than existed in my entire world. Okay, I said slowly, but that still doesn't explain. The trust documents name you as the substitute beneficiary in the event of Brandon's death. You are now the designated recipient of the Chen Family Trust, subject to certain conditions which we'll need to discuss in person. I'm calling to arrange a meeting. Are you available to travel to San Francisco within the next week? The scaffolding crew was yelling for me to get back to work. My crew boss was making angry gestures. I had rent due in 3 days and $840 in my checking account. And this lawyer was telling me I'd just inherited $50 million from a family that had spent 32 years pretending I didn't exist. This is a joke, right? I asked. Someone put you up to this? I assure you, Mr. Martinez, this is entirely legitimate. Brandon's funeral was 3 days ago. The family is gathered for the reading of the will tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Your presence is required. I can arrange travel if cost is a concern. I can pay for my own flight, I said, pride making me stupid. I couldn't really afford a last-minute flight to San Francisco, but I wasn't about to admit that to some fancy lawyer representing the family that had disowned my mother. Good, I'll email you the details. The reading will take place at the Chen residence in Pacific Heights. I should warn you, Mr. Martinez, the family is not aware you've been named as substitute beneficiary. Your presence will come as a surprise, possibly an unwelcome one. They don't know. The trust documents were sealed. Only Brandon, myself, and the trust administrator knew you were named. Brandon never told his family, and given the complicated history between your mother and the Chen family, I thought it best to prepare you for a potentially hostile reception. Hostile, that was probably putting it mildly. My mother had been cut off from the Chen family 33 years ago when she'd gotten pregnant with me. She'd married my father, Roberto Martinez, a construction worker who'd immigrated from Mexico with nothing but work ethic and hope. And the Chen family had given her an ultimatum: leave him and the baby or be disowned. She'd chosen us. Chosen love and poverty over wealth and family approval. And the Chens had erased her from existence, changed the locks, returned her letters unopened, acted like she'd died. I grew up knowing I had rich relatives in San Francisco, knowing there was a whole branch of family that wanted nothing to do with us because my father wasn't white, wasn't wealthy, wasn't worthy of mixing with Chen blood. My mother never spoke about them with bitterness, just sadness, like she'd lost something precious and could never get it back. She died 4 years ago, cancer. I'd been 28, working construction, trying to save money for night classes at community college. She died without ever reconciling with her family, without ever seeing her mother again, without ever being acknowledged. And now they were dead, too. My grandmother had died when I was 15, my grandfather when I was 20. I knew because Mum had seen the obituaries online and cried for days, cried for parents who'd chosen pride over their daughter, chosen money over love. I'll be there, I told Howard Chen. Tomorrow at 2. Excellent. I'll send all the details. And Mr. Martinez, whatever happens tomorrow, remember, the trust is ironclad. Brandon made sure of that. They can't take it from you. They can make it difficult, make it unpleasant, but they cannot prevent you from receiving what's legally yours. He hung up, and I stood in that parking lot, covered in concrete dust, hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. $50 million from a family that hated me because a cousin I'd never met had died, because I was next in line, because somehow, impossibly, I'd gone from barely making rent to being richer than I could comprehend. In a single phone call, in 5 minutes, my entire life had just changed. I didn't go back up the scaffolding, told my crew boss I had a family emergency, got the usual grief about being unreliable, about how construction jobs were hard to come by, about how I'd better be back by Monday or don't bother coming back at all. I nodded, agreed, said all the right things. But in my head, I was thinking, I might never come back. I might never have to come back. I might be done breaking my body for $16 an hour, done living paycheck to paycheck, done wondering if I could afford to fix my truck when it broke down or see a dentist when my tooth hurt. Done. If this was real, if this wasn't some cruel joke or mistake or scam, if I actually inherited $50 million, everything would change. Everything. That night I sat in my apartment, studio in a not great neighbourhood, $750 a month, which was all I could afford, and tried to find information about Brandon Chen. Google made it easy. There were hundreds of results. He'd been everything I wasn't. Stanford undergrad, Harvard MBA. Worked for some prestigious venture capital firm in San Francisco. Lived in Pacific Heights in what looked like a literal mansion. Drove a Tesla. Wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Dated women who looked like models. his Instagram was public or had been, I scrolled through photos of someone who'd had everything: wealth, looks, opportunity, education, family, all the things my mother had sacrificed when she'd chosen my father, all the things I'd grown up without. And he died at 27, driving his Tesla too fast on Highway 1, according to the news report, went off a cliff, died instantly, no drugs or alcohol involved, just speed and bad luck and a turn he didn't make, 27 years old, an entire life of privilege and promise and possibility, gone. And I'd inherited his place, his fortune, his life in a way. I felt sick, felt like a vulture, felt like I was benefiting from someone's death in the most disgusting way. I hadn't asked for this, hadn't wanted this, didn't even know Brandon. And now I was getting $50 million because he'd driven too fast on a coastal highway. It felt wrong. It felt like theft. It felt like the universe had made a mistake. And any second someone would call back and say, "Sorry, wrong Martinez. We meant someone else, someone who actually belonged in that world." But nobody called. The email from Howard Chen arrived with all the details: address in Pacific Heights, time, instructions to bring photo ID and original birth certificate, a warning: the family will likely be hostile. They view you as an interloper, an outsider, taking what should belong to them. Stand your ground. You have every legal right to be there. I booked a flight, used my credit card, and tried not to think about how I'd pay it off if this turned out to be fake. Landed in San Francisco at noon the next day, took an Uber to Pacific Heights because I didn't know the city and didn't want to get lost. The driver made small talk, asked if I was visiting for business or pleasure. I said family. He asked what kind of work I did. I said construction. He nodded like that made sense, like I looked like a construction worker, which I did. Work boots, jeans, flannel shirt, only clean clothes I owned that weren't covered in paint or concrete dust. I didn't look like someone who belonged in Pacific Heights. And when the Uber pulled up to the address, I understood why. The house was, I don't even have words. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. 3-story of white stone and glass perched on a hill with views of the Golden Gate Bridge and San Francisco Bay. Perfectly manicured lawn, topiary, a fountain, a circular driveway with a Bentley and a Range Rover parked in front. This was where my mother had grown up. This was what she'd left behind when she'd chosen my father. This was the price of loving someone the family didn't approve of. I stood on the sidewalk staring at it, feeling like I'd stepped into a different universe, a universe where people lived like this, where this was normal, where $50 million trusts and mansions with fountains were just life. The Uber driver asked if I was okay, if this was the right address. I said yes, paid him, watched him drive away, and then I stood there alone, looking at the house, trying to convince myself to walk up that driveway and ring the doorbell, trying to convince myself I had any right to be there, trying not to run. A man in a suit appeared at the top of the driveway, late 60s, thin, Asian. Professional expression that gave away nothing. "Mr. Martinez," he called. "I'm Howard Chen. We spoke on the phone." I walked up the driveway. My work boots felt loud on the perfect pavement. Everything about me felt wrong. Too rough, too poor, too out of place. Howard extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, professional. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be overwhelming." You could say that. The family is gathered in the study. Before we go in, I want to reiterate, You have every legal right to be here. The trust documents are clear. Brandon named you as substitute beneficiary. That designation cannot be challenged or changed. Whatever happens in that room, remember that." "Why did he name me?" I asked. He never met me, never even knew I existed, probably." "He knew," Howard said. "Brandon was very aware of the family history, of what happened to your mother. He specifically requested information about you several years ago. I provided it, where you lived, what you did for work. He kept track." "Why?" "I don't know. He never explained, but he was deliberate about naming you. This wasn't random. This wasn't default. He chose you." That made it worse somehow, made it feel more intentional, more like Brandon had reached out from death and changed my life on purpose, more like I had a responsibility to understand why, to figure out what he'd wanted, what he'd been thinking when he'd named his estranged working-class cousin as his heir. Howard led me into the house. The inside was even more overwhelming than the outside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that looked expensive and important, furniture that was probably worth more than everything I owned combined. We walked down a hallway lined with family photos. I saw my mother's face in one, young, maybe 20, smiling at the camera. It was the only photo of her I could see. The only acknowledgement she'd ever been part of this family. We stopped at a door, heavy wood, closed. "Ready?" Howard asked. "No, absolutely not," I nodded anyway. He opened the door. 10 people sat in a room that looked like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture, a desk that was probably an antique. Every single person turned to look at me, and I saw it immediately in their faces. Shock, confusion, hostility, disgust. A woman in her 50s stood up, beautiful, Asian, wearing black, grief carved into her face, but rage in her eyes. "What is he doing here?" she demanded. "Who authorized this?" "Mrs. Chen," Howard said calmly. "This is Jake Martinez. He's here for the reading of the will." "We don't know any Jake Martinez," another man said, older, 70s maybe. "This is a private family matter. He needs to leave." "Mr. Richard Chen," Howard said. "Jake Martinez is Maria Chen's son. He is family, and he's named in the trust documents." The room exploded, everyone talking at once, shouting. The woman in black, Brandon's mother, I realised, my Aunt Patricia, looked like she might faint or attack me, hard to tell which. "Maria's son," Patricia said, voice shaking. "Maria's bastard, you mean? Born out of wedlock to some—" "I'm standing right here," I said, first words I'd spoken since entering. "And my parents were married. Maybe get your facts straight before you insult my dead mother." Silence. Patricia's face went white, then red. "How dare you? How dare you come into this house, into our home, on the day we're reading my son's will, and speak to me that way?" "Mrs. Chen," Howard interrupted, "please sit down. Let me explain the situation. Then everyone can respond appropriately." They sat, slowly, reluctantly, like children being forced to behave. I stayed standing by the door, tried to look confident, tried not to show how my hands were shaking, how my heart was pounding, how much I wanted to run. Howard walked to the desk, picked up documents. Brandon Chen's will is straightforward. Personal items go to family members as specified. His apartment and vehicle will be sold, with proceeds going to designated charities. However, the Chen Family Trust, established by William Chen in 1985, currently valued at $50 million, has a separate beneficiary designation. Brandon was primary beneficiary. In the event of his death, the trust passes to the name substitute beneficiary. He paused, looked at me, then back at them. Brandon named Jake Martinez as substitute beneficiary. Jake is now the recipient of the Chen Family Trust, subject to certain conditions which we'll discuss. He will receive full access to the trust within 1 year. The explosion this time was worse. Patricia screamed, actually screamed. Other family members jumped up, started yelling. Someone threw a glass that shattered against the wall. It was chaos, absolute chaos. And I stood there thinking, this is my family. These people are my blood. And they hate me so much. They're literally throwing things. Howard raised his voice. Everyone sit down, or I will terminate this meeting and you will learn the rest of the terms through written correspondence. Your choice. They sat, breathing hard, glaring at me like I'd murdered Brandon myself. This is insane, Patricia said, voice cold now, controlled. Brandon would never. This is a mistake, a fraud. Someone forged documents. The documents are legitimate, Howard said. Brandon signed them 5 years ago in my presence with 2 witnesses. He was of sound mind. This was his choice. He was 22, Patricia shouted. He didn't know what he was doing. He was an adult. A Harvard-educated adult who understood exactly what he was doing. The designation stands. Patricia looked at me with such hatred, I actually stepped back. You, she said, you show up here after 30 years of nothing and think you can just take what's ours, take what my son built, what this family built. I didn't ask for this, I said. I didn't even know Brandon, but apparently he wanted this, wanted me to have it. So maybe instead of screaming at me, you should ask yourselves why. Why would he give $50 million to a cousin he'd never met instead of to his own mother? Wrong thing to say. Absolutely wrong thing to say. But I was angry, defensive, overwhelmed, and the question was real. Why had Brandon done this? What message was he sending? Patricia's face crumpled. She sat down, started crying, not quiet tears, ugly, gasping sobs, and I felt like an asshole. She'd just buried her son, her only child, and now she was being told that son had given his inheritance to a stranger, to someone she viewed as beneath her, as unworthy. How was she supposed to handle that? I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry this is happening like this, but I didn't cause this. Brandon did, and maybe there was a reason. Howard cleared his throat. There's more. The trust has conditions. Jake must meet these conditions to receive full access to the funds. First, he must relocate to San Francisco and maintain primary residence here for 1 full year. Second, he must attend all required family functions and holidays. Third, he must meet quarterly with the trust administrator to demonstrate responsible financial planning. Fourth, he must not engage in any illegal activities or behaviours that would bring shame to the Chen family name. He looked at me. These conditions were Brandon's additions. Your grandfather's original trust had no such requirements. Brandon added them specifically for the substitute beneficiary. For you, if you violate any condition, the trust reverts to the family, divided equally among remaining Chen descendants. Do you understand? I understood. Brandon had set up a test, a game. He'd given me $50 million, but made me earn it by living here with this family for a year, being watched, judged, evaluated, proving I deserved it or proving I didn't. It was brilliant, cruel, complicated, and I had a choice. Walk away and go back to construction and poverty and safety, or stay and fight and endure a year of hatred from people who thought I'd stolen their birthright. $50 million, enough to change not just my life, but generations of my family's lives. Enough to honour my mother's sacrifice, enough to prove that choosing love over money had been worth it, that her legacy mattered. I understand, I said. I accept the conditions. When do I start? Entering the lion's den. The guest house was nicer than any place I'd ever lived. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, actual furniture that matched. It sat at the back of the property, separated from the main house by a garden that probably cost more to maintain than I made in a year. Howard showed me around while the family held what he called a private discussion in the main house. Translation: they were deciding how to get rid of me. You'll have privacy here, Howard said, showing me how the security system worked. The family rarely comes to this part of the property. There's a separate entrance off the back gate. You can come and go without interacting with them if you prefer. Do I want to prefer that? I asked. He smiled grimly. Probably. Patricia is, she's devastated about Brandon, and she's not handling the trust situation well. The rest of the family takes their cues from her. If she's hostile, they'll be hostile. Why did Brandon do this? I asked. Why name me? Why set up all these conditions? I truly don't know. Brandon was brilliant but complicated. He never explained his reasoning, but I can tell you this. Everything Brandon did was intentional. Every condition, every requirement, every clause. He wanted you here, in this house, with this family, for a year. There was a purpose. I moved in 2 days later. Everything I owned fit in my truck. Clothes, some books, tools, my mother's photo albums. That was it. 32 years of life in the back of a Ford F-150. The family watched me unload from the main house windows. I could feel their eyes, their judgment. This guy shows up in a beat-up truck wearing work boots and thinks he belongs here. Who does he think he is? I knew what they were thinking because I was thinking the same thing. Who did I think I was? I was a construction worker, high school diploma, no college, no sophistication, no class. I didn't know which fork to use at fancy dinners, didn't know wine from vinegar, didn't know how to talk to people whose monthly gardening budget was more than I made in a year. I didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. The first family dinner was mandatory. Howard had been clear. Part of the conditions meant attending family functions, Sunday dinners, holidays, important gatherings. This was Sunday dinner. I showed up at the main house at 7 wearing my best clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt I'd bought at Target specifically for this. Everyone else looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Patricia sat at the head of the table in the seat that had probably been Brandon's. She looked at me like I was something tracked in on someone's shoe. "You're late," she said. I checked my phone. 7:02. "Sorry, didn't know we were running on a strict schedule. The Chen family dines at 7 sharp. If you're going to live here, you'll learn our customs." I sat in the only empty chair at the far end of the table, as far from Patricia as possible. Convenient, symbolic. The family gathered. Patricia, Richard, her brother, my uncle, his wife Linda, their 2 adult children, Marcus and Sophia, another uncle, Thomas, who barely said a word at the will reading, his wife, Karen. That was it. 8 people plus me, my entire extended family. people I'd never met who wished I'd never been born. A woman in an actual uniform served the first course. Soup. Something fancy with words I didn't recognise on the menu. Card at my place. I picked up my spoon. Wrong spoon, apparently. Sophia smirked. "Outside in," she said. "You work from the outside in with utensils." "Thanks," I said. Switched spoons. Felt my face burn. This was going to be a long year. "So," Richard said after excruciating silence, "Jake, tell us about yourself. What is it you do exactly?" The way he said it made it clear he already knew and found it amusing. Construction, commercial projects mostly, high-rises, office buildings. "How industrious," Linda said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Manual labour. Your mother must have been so proud." "She was," I said, meeting her gaze. "She was proud I worked hard, paid my bills, didn't depend on family money I didn't earn." Direct hit. Linda's smile vanished. "Are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. You asked about my mother. I'm telling you what she valued. Work, integrity, family, real family. Not the kind that cuts you off for marrying someone they don't approve of." "How dare you?" Patricia said, voice shaking. "How dare you come into this house and lecture ES about family? You know nothing about this family, nothing about what Maria did, the shame she brought." "The shame?" I put down my spoon. "She fell in love. She had a baby. She built a life with a good man who worked himself to death, providing for us. What part of that is shameful?" "She married beneath her," Patricia said coldly. "She threw away everything, her education, her future, her family for some construction worker, some immigrant who—" "Careful," I said, voice low, dangerous. "That immigrant was my father, and he was worth 10 of anyone at this table. He came to this country with nothing, built a life through pure work, raised me to value honour and honesty over money. He died when I was 16 and left us with nothing but debt and dignity. So, yeah, my mum married him. Best decision she ever made, even if it meant losing all this." I gestured at the room. The luxury, the wealth, the coldness, silence. Patricia stood up. "I've lost my appetite. Enjoy your dinner." She left. The others sat there uncomfortably. I'd been there less than a week and already blown up the first family dinner. Perfect. Sophia broke the silence. "That was quite a speech. Very working class hero. Did you rehearse it?" "Didn't need to," I said. "It's just the truth." "The truth," Marcus said, "is that you're here because Brandon made a stupid decision when he was 22. And now you're getting $50 million you did nothing to earn, while the rest of us, the people who actually knew him, who were actually family, get nothing." "Then maybe you should ask yourselves why," I said. "Why would Brandon give his money to someone he'd never met instead of to his family? What does that say about you?" I finished my soup in silence. Nobody else ate. Nobody spoke. The awkwardness was suffocating. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. "Jake, I think we got off on the wrong foot. This is emotional for everyone. Perhaps we could start over?" "Sure," I said, not believing him. "Fresh start. Good. Now, I know you're new to this world, new to having resources. I'd be happy to offer guidance, financial planning, investment opportunities. The Chen family has business interests that—" "I'm good," I said. "Thanks, though." "You're good," he repeated. "You're a construction worker who just inherited $50 million and you're good. You don't need financial advice." I didn't say I don't need advice. I said I'm good. Meaning I'll find my own advisors, people who don't have a personal interest in what I do with the money. Richard's face hardened. I see. You think we're trying to take advantage of you. Are you? He didn't answer, just went back to his soup. Message received. Yes. Yes, they absolutely were. And I'd shut that down before it started. Good. The dinner limped along for 2 more courses. Conversations happened around me, not with me. They discussed people I didn't know, events I hadn't attended, problems I didn't understand, rich people problems. The club membership committee is being ridiculous about the wait list. Did you hear the Winstons are divorcing? She's getting the Tahoe house. The foundation gala is next month. I assume we're all attending. I sat there feeling like an anthropologist observing an alien culture. These were my relatives, my family, and I had absolutely nothing in common with them. Nothing to say, nothing to contribute. I didn't belong here, would never belong here. The year stretched ahead of me like a prison sentence. After dinner, I escaped back to the guest house, called my buddy Marco from the crew. "How's life as a millionaire?" he asked. "I'm not a millionaire yet. Gotta survive a year first." And I'm pretty sure they're going to make it the longest year of my life. You can handle it, man. It's just a year. And then 50 million. That's like, he did the math. $10,000 for every day you stay. You can suffer rich people for that. He was right. I would, but it wasn't going to be easy. The next morning I woke up to someone pounding on the guest house door. Opened it to find Patricia standing there. 7 a.m, no makeup. Grief and rage raw on her face. "We need to talk," she said. I let her in. Offered coffee. She refused. Just stood in my living room looking at me like she was trying to solve an equation. "Why are you here?" she finally asked. "You know why. The trust. The conditions." "I have to." "No. Why are you really here? What do you want?" "The money," I said honestly. "I'm not going to pretend otherwise. $50 million is life-changing. It's generational wealth. It's everything my mother gave up when she chose my father. So, yeah, I want it." "At least you're honest about being a gold digger." "I'm not a gold digger. Brandon left this to me. I didn't ask for it, didn't pursue it, didn't even know about it. He chose this. He chose me. You want to be angry at someone? Be angry at your son. Slap." She slapped me, hard, across the face. I stood there shocked, cheeks stinging. Patricia breathing hard. Don't you dare speak about Brandon like you knew him, like you understand anything about him. He was my son, my only child, and now he's gone, and you're here, taking his place, taking his money, taking everything he was supposed to have. She was crying now. Ugly, broken sobs. And despite the slap, despite the hatred, I felt sorry for her. She'd lost her son, her only child, and less than a week later, she was being told that son had rejected her, had given his inheritance to a stranger, had chosen anyone but her. How was she supposed to process that? "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, meant it. "I can't imagine what you're going through. But I'm not your enemy. I'm not here to replace Brandon or erase him or..." "Then leave," she said. "Walk away. Give up the trust. Let it revert to the family. You don't need $50 million. You don't even understand what to do with that kind of money. But we do. This family has maintained wealth for 3 generations. We know how to preserve it, honour it, use it properly. You'll just waste it, squander it, prove you never deserved it in the first place." "Maybe," I said, "maybe I will, but it's mine to waste. Brandon made sure of that. Why? She asked, desperate now. Why would he do this? What did I do wrong? What did this family do wrong? Why would he reject us like this? I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. She left. I stood there with my cheeks still stinging, thinking, that's twice in 2 days someone in this family has attacked me, and I'd been here less than 48 hours. What would the next 50 weeks look like? The answer came faster than expected. That afternoon, Howard called, asked me to come to his office downtown, said it was important. I drove there in my truck, got looks from people parking Teslas and BMWs, and found him in a glass tower office with views of the bay. How are you settling in? He asked. But great, I lied. Everyone's super welcoming. It's like one big happy family. He smiled slightly. Patricia called me this morning, said you'd been disrespectful and hostile and demanded I remove you from the property. She slapped me. Yes, she mentioned that. Claimed you provoked her. I told her the truth, that Brandon chose me. If that's provocation, I guess I'm guilty. Howard nodded. The family is going to make this difficult. You need to understand that. They view you as a thief, an interloper, someone taking what they believe is rightfully theirs. They're going to test you, push you, try to make you quit or violate the trust conditions so they can take the money back. So what do I do? Survive, keep your head down, follow the rules, and... He pulled out a box from his desk. Read these. Inside were letters, dozens of them, different coloured paper, different handwriting, different dates. What are these? Letters your mother wrote to her family over the years. They were returned unopened. Brandon collected them. He has had every letter Maria ever sent, every attempt she made to reconcile, every plea for acknowledgement. He kept them all. I stared at the box, my mother's voice, her pain, her hope, all rejected, all sent back, all saved by a cousin who'd never even met her. Why? I don't know, but he wanted you to have them. They were in his apartment with a note. For Jake, if anything happens to me. He knew you'd end up here. He planned for it. I took the box back to the guest house, spent the evening reading my mother's letters. They started when I was a baby. Please, one said, I know you're angry. I know I disappointed you, but he's your grandson, your blood. Don't punish a baby for my choices. They continued through my childhood. Jake is 5 now. He's smart, sweet. He asks about you sometimes, about his grandmother. I don't know what to tell him. Through my teens. Jake graduated high school, top of his class. He got a scholarship to community college. I'm so proud of him. I wish you could know him. He's everything good in this world. The last letter was dated 6 months before she died. I don't have much time left. The cancer is everywhere. I'm writing one last time to say, I forgive you. I forgive you for choosing pride over love, for choosing money over your daughter, for missing Jake's entire life. I forgive you because holding anger takes energy I don't have, but I want you to know I never regretted my choice. Roberto and Jake gave me a life full of love. You gave me a life full of money. I chose right. I hope someday you realise that. Maria. They'd never read these letters, never opened them, never knew my mother forgave them, never knew she'd lived a happy life despite their rejection. They'd spent 30 years thinking they'd punished her, thinking she'd suffered for defying them, and she'd been happy, happier than any of them seemed to be with all their wealth and status and precious family name. Brandon had known. He'd read these letters. He'd understood that my mother had won, that choosing love over money wasn't sacrifice, it was victory. And now he'd given me a chance to prove it again, to take their money and show them it didn't make me like them, didn't corrupt me, didn't turn me into someone who valued wealth over people. I understood now. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about finishing what my mother started, about proving the Chens wrong, about showing that money doesn't buy happiness or worth or family. It just buys money, and that's all it would ever be. I had a year to prove it, a year to survive their hostility and tests and attempts to break me, a year to show them that Jake Martinez, construction worker, son of immigrants, product of love over wealth, was worth 50 million times more than they'd ever understand. Game on. I'd play by their rules. I'd attend their dinners. I'd live in their world, but I wouldn't become their world. I'd stay who I was, honour who my mother was, and at the end of the year, I'd take their money and do something that would make them furious, something that would prove my mother right, something that would make Brandon proud wherever he was. I just had to survive long enough to get there. Uncovering the past. The box of letters became my obsession. Every night after enduring family dinners or charity events or Chen family business meetings I wasn't actually expected to participate in, I'd come back to the guest house and read, not just my mother's letters. Brandon had collected more than that. He had photos, old ones, of my mother as a child, a teenager, a young woman. Photos I'd never seen. In them she was laughing, vibrant, alive, surrounded by family who looked at her with love. There was one photo, her maybe 19, standing between her parents at what looked like a formal event. Everyone in evening wear. My mother in a dress that probably cost more than our rent. She looked beautiful, wealthy, like she belonged, like she'd been born for this life, and she'd walked away from all of it for my father, for me, for love. What kind of courage did that take? What kind of certainty that what she was gaining was worth more than what she was losing? I found something else in Brandon's collection, a journal, his journal, dated entries starting from when he was 15, ending 2 weeks before he died. I knew I shouldn't read it, knew it was private, knew it was wrong, but I needed to understand, needed to know why he'd done this, why he'd named me, why he'd set up this elaborate test. So I read, and what I found broke my heart. Brandon had been miserable, utterly, completely, desperately miserable. The first entry I read, Mum scheduled my entire summer again. SAT prep Monday through Thursday, volunteering at the hospital Fridays, tennis lessons Saturdays, family obligations Sundays. When exactly am I supposed to have a life? When am I supposed to figure out who I am beyond being Patricia Chen's son? It got worse. Entry after entry of a young man suffocating under expectations. Got into Stanford. Mum cried with joy. I cried in my room because I wanted to go to art school, wanted to study photography. But Chen men go to Stanford. Chen men study business. Chen men become something, never mind what I actually want. More. 21 today. Uncle Richard gave me a watch. Uncle Thomas gave me stock tips. Mum gave me a lecture about living up to the family legacy. Nobody asked what I wanted. Nobody cares. I'm not Brandon. I'm the heir. The next generation Chen, the one who will carry on the name and the business and the expectations. I'm so tired. There were entries about Maria. about my mother. Found Mum's old room today. She'd kept it exactly the way it was, like a shrine to the daughter who betrayed her. I read some letters, the ones Maria sent that came back unopened. She sounded happy. She wrote about her son, about his father, about building a life that mattered, and I realised she escaped. She got out. She chose being poor and happy over being rich and miserable, and I'm jealous of her, jealous of someone the family treats like she's dead. How fucked up is that? Later, entries mentioned me specifically. Found out about Jake Martinez, Maria's son. He's my age, basically. Lives in Denver, works construction, has no idea he has rich relatives who pretend he doesn't exist. Part of me wants to reach out, tell him, what? That I envy him? That I'd trade my trust fund for his freedom? That I wish I had his courage to just be instead of perform? He'd think I'm insane. Rich kid problems, right? But they're still problems. They're still real. The entry that destroyed me. I'm 26. I have everything anyone could want: money, education, opportunity, a career that's promising, a life that's privileged. And I wake up every morning wishing I was dead. Not dramatically, not suicidally, just not existing would be easier than existing as this, as Patricia Chen's perfect son, as the Chen family heir, as someone who's never made a single choice that was actually his. I think about Jake sometimes, about my cousin I've never met. Wonder if he's happy. Wonder if being poor but free is better than being rich but trapped. I think it probably is. And then, 3 months before he died, I've decided I'm changing my trust designation. Jake Martinez gets it all. Let him have the money and the family and the expectations. Let him deal with Patricia and Richard and Uncle Thomas. Let him figure out if $50 million is worth becoming someone you hate. I'm betting it's not. I'm betting he'll take the money and stay exactly who he is. And that will drive them insane. That will prove Maria was right. That will show this family what they've always refused to see. Money doesn't make you better. It just makes you richer. And rich people can be just as miserable, maybe more miserable than anyone else. This is my gift to Jake and my revenge on them. They'll have to watch someone they consider beneath them inherit everything, have to accept that their precious family legacy is going to a construction worker, have to face the fact that Brandon Chen, the perfect son, the golden heir, rejected them completely, chose a stranger over his own mother. I hope it destroys them. I hope it makes them question everything, and I hope Jake takes that money and does something that would make Maria proud. That's all I want. That's my legacy. I sat there with the journal in my hands, crying for Brandon, for the cousin I'd never met who'd been so unhappy he'd seen giving me $50 million as revenge, who'd been so trapped he'd thought freedom was impossible, who died at 27, maybe on purpose, maybe driving too fast because he didn't care if he made that turn or not. Patricia had raised a son who'd rather die than keep living the life she'd designed for him, and she had no idea. None of them did. They thought Brandon had been happy, thought he'd loved his privilege, thought he'd died in a tragic accident while living his best life. But he'd been dying inside for years, and the accident, reading his final entries, I wasn't sure it had been an accident at all. Taking a drive up Highway 1 tomorrow, haven't decided if I'm coming back. That probably sounds dramatic, but I'm just tired. So tired. If I don't come back, Jake gets the trust. He gets to deal with all of this. And maybe that's fair, maybe that's right. He's Maria's son. She chose freedom. Maybe he will too. Maybe he'll take their money and stay true to himself and show them that everything they value is worthless. I hope so. I really hope so. 2 days later, Brandon was dead. His Tesla off a cliff on Highway 1. Tragic accident. But was it? Had he deliberately not made that turn? Had he chosen death over continuing to live a lie? I'd never know. But reading his words, understanding his pain, knowing what he'd endured, it changed everything. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about freedom, about proving that choosing authenticity over approval was possible, about showing the Chen family that their way, their values, their priorities, their life wasn't the only way, wasn't even a good way. Brandon had given me a mission. Whether he'd lived or died, whether it was accident or choice, he'd set something in motion. He'd brought me here to finish what my mother started, to prove the Chens wrong, to show them that love and authenticity and working class dignity were worth more than any trust. Fund, and I was going to do it. I was going to survive this year. I was going to take their money and I was going to use it in ways that would make them furious, in ways that would honour my mother, in ways that would make Brandon's sacrifice, because that's what it was. A sacrifice means something. The next family dinner, I looked at them differently. Patricia sitting at the head of the table, still grieving, still bitter, still not understanding why her son had rejected her. Richard making small talk about market conditions and investment opportunities. Thomas discussing the foundation board and charity obligations. Marcus and Sophia scrolling their phones, bored, privileged, completely oblivious to how lucky they were. They were miserable, all of them. They had everything, money, status, security, and they were miserable, just like Brandon had been, just like my mother had been before she'd escaped. This family was poison. This life was poison, and they couldn't even see it. I could. Brandon had seen it. My mother had seen it. And we'd all made the same choice. Get out. She'd escaped by choosing my father. Brandon had escaped by dying or letting himself die. And I'd escape by taking their money and proving it had no power over me, proving I could be wealthy without being them. The food tasted better after that. The conversations became amusing instead of annoying. They thought they were testing me, thought they were making me uncomfortable, thought they could drive me away, but I wasn't going anywhere. I was staying right here, playing their game by my rules, and at the end of the year, I'd win in ways they couldn't imagine. The power struggle. 3 months in, the family stopped being subtle. They wanted me gone, and they were willing to do whatever it took to make it happen. It started with Richard. He invited me to lunch at his club, one of those places where membership costs 6 figures and everyone speaks in hushed tones about money and influence. I showed up in khakis and a button down. Everyone else wore suits. The maitre d' looked at me like I'd wandered in from the street. "I'm meeting Richard Chen," I said. He checked his list, sniffed, led me to a table where Richard sat with another man, both in expensive suits, both looking like they owned a world. "Jake!" Richard stood, shook my hand, all warmth and welcome, complete bullshit. "Thanks for coming. This is Martin Prescott. He's a financial advisor, one of the best. I thought it would be good for you two to meet." Translation: "I've brought someone to tell you what to do with the money." "Nice to meet you," I said, sitting down. Martin smiled. Shark smile. "Richard tells me?" You're new to wealth management? That's completely understandable. Most people in your position would be overwhelmed. That's where I come in. My position? Inheriting a substantial sum without the background or education to manage it properly. It's quite common, actually, and dangerous without proper guidance. New wealth can disappear remarkably quickly. He pulled out a folder, started explaining investment strategies and risk management and portfolio diversification. All of it designed to sound helpful. All of it actually saying, you're too stupid to handle this yourself. Here's what I recommend, Martin said. We set up a managed account. You'd receive a comfortable allowance, say $500,000 annually, while the principal remains invested and grows. Professional management ensures the wealth lasts generations instead of being squandered. $500,000 a year, I said, out of $50 million is quite generous for someone at your level of experience. And it protects you from making costly mistakes. Mistakes like having control over my own money. Richard jumped in. Jake, I know you're independent. I respect that, but this is serious money. $50 million requires professional management. You can't just what? I asked. Can't just be trusted with it? Can't just make my own decisions? Can't just tell you both to go fuck yourselves? Silence. Other diners looked over. Martin's smile vanished. Mr. Martinez, I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to control me, control the money. Richard probably gets a cut if I sign with you. Or maybe you both get to manage the funds and skim millions while telling me it's standard fees. Did I get that about right? Richard's face went red. How dare you? I'm trying to help family. I'm not your family, I said. Your family made that clear 30 years ago when they disowned my mother. You don't get to pretend now. You don't get to act like you care. You want control of the money. And I'm not giving it to you. I stood up. Thanks for lunch. I'll pass. I left. Could feel their eyes on my back. Knew I'd made enemies. Didn't care. That was attempt 1. Attempt 2 came from Patricia. She invited me to the main house for tea. Just the two of us. I should have known it was a trap. She served Earl Grey in actual china cups. Sat across from me in a formal sitting room that probably hadn't changed since 1950. I've been thinking, she said, about Brandon, about what he'd want. Okay. He'd want the money to go to family, real family, people who knew him, loved him. I'm his mother. I carried him, raised him, devoted my life to him. And he gave his inheritance to you. A stranger. That's not what he really wanted. It couldn't be. Then why did he do it? I asked. I don't know, but I know it's wrong. And I'm asking you, begging you to do the right thing. Sign over the trust. Give it back to the family. We'll compensate you. $5 million. Life-changing money for someone like you. You'd never have to work again. You could live comfortably forever, and you'd be doing the right thing, the honourable thing. $5 million. She was offering me $5 million to walk away from 50, a 90% discount on what Brandon had left me, and she thought I'd take it. Thought I'd be so grateful for scraps, I'd give up everything. No, I said, no. She looked shocked, like she'd fully expected me to jump at the offer. You're refusing $5 million? I'm refusing your $5 million. Brandon left me 50. That's what I'm taking. You're being greedy, she said, voice hardening. Selfish. You have no right to that money, no claim. You're taking advantage of a tragedy, of my son's death. That makes you no better than a thief. Brandon chose this, I said. He chose me. And I'm starting to understand why. He knew what this family was, how they operate, how they try to control everything, everyone. He wanted out, and he couldn't get out himself. So he gave me the resources to get out for him, to show you that your way isn't the only way, that money doesn't make you better, that everything you value is actually worthless. Get out, she said, voice shaking. Get out of my house. Gladly. But just so we're clear, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying the full year. I'm taking the full 50 million, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. Attempt 3 came from Sophia. She showed up at the guest house at 10 p.m. wearing designer jeans and a tight sweater. Smiled, flirted, made it clear what she was offering. You must be lonely, she said, sitting on my couch, uninvited, living here all alone, no friends, no family who actually likes you. I'm fine. I could make it easier. We could spend time together, get to know each other. I could show you how to navigate this world, how to fit in, how to be accepted. And what would you want in return? She laughed. Smart, I like that. Okay, direct, marry me. We split the money. You get 25 million and a wife who knows this world. I get 25 million and a husband who's rough around the edges but trainable. Everyone wins. Everyone except Brandon, I said, who wanted me to have the money. Not you, not your mother, not anyone in this family. Me. Brandon's dead, she said, blunt, cruel. He doesn't care anymore, but we're alive. We could be smart about this, could be partners. Get out, Jake. Get out, now. Before I call Howard and tell him you're trying to coerce me into violating the trust terms. Pretty sure attempting to marry the beneficiary for money counts as interference. She left, furious, and I realised they were getting desperate. 3 months down, 9 to go, and they were running out of subtle approaches, which meant they'd start getting unsubtle. I was right. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the San Francisco Police Department. Someone had filed a complaint, said I'd threatened them, said I'd been erratic and possibly dangerous. When I asked who filed it, they wouldn't say. But I knew Patricia or Richard or someone who wanted documentation that I was unstable, building a case to challenge the trust. I hired a lawyer, not Howard. He was the trust administrator, had to stay neutral. Someone else, someone who specialised in defending against exactly this kind of harassment. Cost me $10,000 I didn't have. Had to borrow from Marco, but it was worth it. The police investigated, found no evidence. Complaint dismissed, but it was a warning. They'd use any tool available, any method, any lie. They'd tried to prove I was incompetent, dangerous, unworthy, and I had to be perfect. Had to never give them ammunition. Had to play the game flawlessly. Meanwhile, I was using the monthly allowance Howard disbursed, $50,000 a month, for living expenses per the trust terms in ways that would have horrified the family. I hired my old construction crew, paid them to help me build a community centre in the neighbourhood where I'd grown up in Denver, sent money to families I knew who were struggling, funded scholarships for kids trying to go to college. Every dollar I spent on people, on actually helping, on proving that money could do good if you weren't hoarding it like a dragon guarding treasure. The family found out, of course. Richard confronted me at the next Sunday dinner. I hear you're sending money to Denver, to strangers, to people who have no connection to this family. They're not strangers, they're friends, family of another kind. You're wasting money that should be invested, growing, building wealth. I'm using money to actually help people, I said, to make lives better, to honour what my mother would have wanted, what Brandon would have wanted. You should try it sometime. This is exactly why you're not suited for this inheritance, Patricia said. You don't understand wealth, don't understand responsibility. You're treating 50 million like it's disposable, like you can just give it away to anyone with a sob story. Better than hoarding it while people suffer, I said. Better than sitting in a mansion talking about investment portfolios while kids go hungry. Better than what you do with your money. The fight escalated, ended with me leaving dinner early, walking back to the guest house, knowing I'd made things worse, knowing they'd use this against me, knowing I didn't care, because Brandon was right. This family was poison. They valued money over everything, over people, over happiness, over life, and I'd rather be broke and kind than rich and cruel. 6 months in, Howard called, asked me to come to his office. His tone was serious, worried. When I arrived, he looked grim. The family has filed a formal challenge to the trust. They're claiming Brandon was mentally incompetent when he made you substitute beneficiary, that he was suffering from depression and his judgment was impaired. Can they do that? They can try. They won't win. Brandon was evaluated by psychiatrists, was deemed competent, and the trust documents are ironclad. But they can make it expensive and time-consuming, tie up the money in court for years. How long? 2 years minimum, maybe 5, and you'd need to pay legal fees while fighting it. I can't afford that. I know, which is why you need to decide, do you fight or do you walk away? They're offering a settlement, 10 million, final offer. Take it and go back to Denver, or stay and fight and risk ending up with nothing. 10 million, twice what Patricia had offered. Still a fraction of what Brandon had left me, but guaranteed, real, safe. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. I'm staying. I'm fighting. Brandon wanted me to have 50 million, and that's what I'm taking. Tell them I'll see them in court. Howard smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that, but I want you to understand what you're up against. This family has resources, power, connections. They can make this brutal. Let them try. There's something else, Howard said, something you should know about Brandon's death. My stomach dropped. What about it? The police ruled it an accident, but I've always wondered. Brandon changed his trust designation 3 months before he died. Set up all these conditions specifically for you. And then he died driving too fast on a road he'd driven hundreds of times. Could be coincidence. Could be he was distracted or he did it on purpose. I can't prove that. But I knew Brandon. Knew he was unhappy. Knew he felt trapped. And reading his journal after his death, I think he saw this as his escape, his way out, his revenge on a family that had suffocated him his entire life. And if that's true, if he died to set this in motion, then you owe it to him to finish it, to prove he was right, to show this family what they did to him. I left Howard's office with a new mission. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about justice, about honouring Brandon's sacrifice, about proving that choosing freedom over wealth, even choosing death over wealth, was valid, was right, was the only sane response to what this family represented. Chens had killed Brandon, not literally, but they'd destroyed who he could have been, crushed his spirit, made him so miserable that driving off a cliff seemed preferable to living another day in their world. And they didn't even know it, didn't even care. They just wanted the money, wanted control, wanted to maintain their perfect image while inside they were all slowly dying, just like Brandon had. I was going to take their money, I was going to win this fight, and then I was going to use every dollar to prove everything they believed was wrong. That was my promise to Brandon. That was my promise to my mother. That was my promise to myself. 6 more months, and then the real work would begin. The choice and resolution. The court case dragged on for 8 months. Depositions, psychiatrist evaluations, expert testimony about Brandon's mental state. The family spent hundreds of thousands on lawyers trying to prove their dead son had been incompetent, trying to argue that giving $50 million to his working-class cousin was evidence of impaired judgment rather than deliberate choice. I spent every dollar of my monthly allowance on my own lawyers, watched my savings evaporate, borrowed money from Marco and other friends who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And through it all, I kept going to Sunday dinners, kept attending Chen family functions, kept following every single condition of the trust, because I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of saying I'd violated the terms, wouldn't let them win by default. The family made it hell. They stopped speaking to me at dinners, would discuss business and plans around me like I was furniture. Patricia refused to acknowledge my presence. Richard made snide comments about leeches and gold diggers. Marcus and Sophia whispered and laughed whenever I walked by. But I endured for Brandon, for my mother, for myself. The trial finally came. San Francisco Superior Court, stand-in room only because the Chen family drama had made local news. Working class, heir battles wealthy family for $50 million trust. The media loved it. David versus Goliath. Poor immigrant son versus old money. The American dream versus inherited privilege. I sat at the defendant's table. Technically, I was the defendant since they were challenging Brandon's decision, and watched the Chen family present their case. They brought psychiatrists who testified Brandon had been depressed, teachers who said he'd been withdrawn, friends who said he'd been troubled. They built a picture of someone not in his right mind, someone whose judgment couldn't be trusted. Then my lawyers presented their evidence. Brandon's medical record showing he'd been evaluated and found competent. His academic records showing brilliant performance at Stanford and Harvard. His professional evaluations showing he was exceptional at his job. And most damning, his journal. My lawyers read passages, not the most personal ones, but enough to show Brandon hadn't been incompetent. He'd been unhappy, trapped, suffocated, but fully aware of what he was doing when he'd named me as heir. Ladies and gentlemen, my attorney said in closing arguments, this isn't about mental competence. This is about a young man who saw his family clearly, who understood what they valued and what they destroyed, who chose to give his inheritance to someone outside that toxic system, someone who represented everything his family rejected, working class values, immigrant heritage, choosing love over money. Brandon Chen was brilliant, and his final act was to prove that wealth without humanity is worthless. That family without love is meaningless. That money can't buy what truly matters. The Chen family isn't challenging his competence. They're challenging his values. And in America, we don't let families override someone's choices simply because those choices make them uncomfortable. The judge deliberated for 3 days, then delivered her ruling. This court finds that Brandon Chen was of sound mind and full legal competence when he executed his trust documents. The designation of Jake Martinez as substitute beneficiary was deliberate, knowing and legally binding. The trust conditions are valid and enforceable. The challenge is dismissed. Mr. Martinez, congratulations. The trust is yours. Patricia screamed in court, had to be escorted out by bailiffs. Richard looked like he'd been punched. The rest of the family sat in stunned silence. They'd been so sure, so confident that their money and power and connections would win, that judges and courts and legal systems would favour them over someone like me. They'd been wrong. I'd won. $50 million, mine, earned, not through work or inheritance or luck, but through surviving, through enduring a year of hatred and manipulation and attacks, through proving I could exist in their world without becoming part of their world, through honouring Brandon's choice and my mother's legacy. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouted questions, wanted my reaction. "How does it feel to win?" one asked. "Like justice," I said. "Brandon made a choice." Today, that choice was honoured. That's all this was ever about. "What will you do with the money?" "Something Brandon would be proud of. Something my mother would be proud of. Something that proves money can be used for good instead of hoarding and control." Will you reconcile with the Chen family? I looked back at the courthouse where Patricia was being comforted by Richard, where the rest of the family stood looking lost and angry and broken. "That's up to them," I said. I'd like us to be family for real instead of just DNA, but only if they can accept that Brandon's choice was valid, that I deserve this, that their way of living isn't the only way. If they can do that, I'm here. If they can't, then they were never really family to begin with. That night, I sat in the guest house, my guest house now technically, since I'd inherited everything, and called Marco. "I won," I said. "Holy shit, man. 50 million? 50 million. What are you going to do? Change everything." The next morning, I met with Howard and a team of financial advisors, my own advisors, people with no connection to the Chen family. We created a plan. 25 million would go into an endowment for the Maria Martinez Foundation, named after my mother, dedicated to providing housing and education support for working class families, especially immigrant families, helping people like us, like we'd never stopped being despite the money. 10 million would go to construction and infrastructure projects in underserved neighbourhoods. I'd hire my old crew, we'd build community centres, affordable housing, parks. We'd use my construction knowledge and their money to actually improve things, not just write cheques and attend galas, actually work. 5 million would go to scholarships, kids from working class backgrounds trying to get educated. No essays about overcoming adversity, no applications about worthiness, just you're working class, you want to learn, here's money, full stop. The remaining 10 million after taxes and fees would be mine to live on, to invest, to ensure I never had to worry about money again while still living like a regular person, not hoarding, not displaying, just secure, When the family found out, they were furious. Patricia called. First time she'd spoken to me in months. You're doing what with the money? Creating a foundation, building things, helping people. That's our money, our family's money. You can't just give it away to strangers. It's not your money, I said calmly. It's mine. Brandon made sure of that, and I'm using it the way he'd want, the way my mother would want, the way that actually matters. This is insane. This is wasteful. This is what choosing love over money looks like, I said. My mother did it. Brandon tried to do it, and now I'm doing it. You should try it sometime. Might make you less miserable. She hung up, called Howard, demanding he stop me, but there was nothing she could do, nothing any of them could do. The money was mine, the choice was mine, the power was mine, and I was using it to prove everything they'd rejected was actually what mattered most. 6 months later, I stood at the opening of the first Maria Martinez Community Centre in Denver, built by my old crew who were now my employees, making union wages with benefits, designed to provide after-school programs, job training, ESL classes, free legal assistance, services for working-class families who needed help, who'd been forgotten by people with money. I'd invited the Chen family, didn't expect them to come, but they did. Some of them, Marcus showed up, so did Sophia, even Thomas and Karen. They walked through the centre looking uncomfortable, out of place, like they didn't know how to process what they were seeing. This is what you spent the money on? Marcus asked. Part of it. There are 3 more centres planned, plus affordable housing projects, plus the scholarship fund, plus you're giving it all away, Sophia interrupted. Yes. Why? She asked, genuinely confused. Why not keep it, invest it, build wealth, secure your future? My future is secure, I said. I have $10 million invested conservatively. That's more than enough. The rest? It's doing what Brandon wanted, what my mother wanted. It's proving that money without purpose is just paper, that wealth without humanity is worthless, that choosing people over profit isn't sacrifice, it's victory. They left, looking thoughtful, not converted, but thoughtful. That night, I got a call from Patricia. I saw what you built, she said, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. The community centre. And I've been thinking about Maria, about Brandon, about what I've spent my life valuing and protecting and hoarding. She paused. Long silence then. Your mother was braver than I was. She chose love, chose authenticity, chose a hard life that was real over an easy life that was fake, and I resented her for it because she had courage I didn't have, because she did what I'd always been too afraid to do, leave, walk away, choose something real over something safe. What are you saying? I asked. I'm saying she was right and I was wrong, and Brandon knew it. That's why he gave you the money, not to punish me, but to show me, to force me to see what I'd refused to see for 30 years, that everything I valued was empty, everything I'd protected was worthless, everything I'd built was a prison. Another pause. I heard her crying. I lost my son because I cared more about the Chen family legacy than about his happiness, more about appearances than authenticity, more about money than love. And now he's gone, and I have all this wealth and status, and none of it matters because the only thing that mattered is dead. It's not too late, I said. You can choose differently. You can use your money for good. You can be part of the foundation, part of building something that matters, part of honouring Brandon by proving he was right. Would you let me? She asked. Would you let me help? After everything? Your family, I said. Real family now, not just DNA, if you want to be, if you're willing to work, to actually help instead of just write checks and attend galas, then yes, I'd let you help. I'd like that, she said. I'd like to do something that would make Brandon proud, that would make Maria proud, that would make me proud instead of just rich. She joined the foundation board a month later. So did Marcus and Sophia, and eventually even Richard, though he grumbled about wasting capital the whole time. They actually worked, helped build centres, staff programs, distribute scholarships, got their hands dirty, met the people we were helping, saw what money could do when it was used for people instead of hoarded for legacy. They changed, not completely, not overnight, but gradually. They started understanding what my mother had known, that love and purpose and helping others mattered more than any trust fund, that choosing authenticity over approval was possible, that the Chen family legacy didn't have to be about wealth, it could be about impact. 2 years after inheriting, I stood at a family dinner, real family dinner, not the formal torture of before, and looked around the table. Patricia, laughing at something Marcus said. Sophia showing photos from a housing project she'd helped build. Thomas discussing scholarship recipients with genuine pride instead of condescension. They were still rich, still privileged, still had blind spots and prejudices to work through, but they were trying to be better, trying to use their resources for good, trying to honour Brandon's memory by proving money doesn't have to corrupt. That wealth can be a tool for helping instead of a weapon for controlling. My mother's photo sat on the mantel. First time it had been displayed in the Chen house in 30 years. Patricia had put it there, had apologised to a photo of her dead sister for everything, for the rejection, the judgment, the hatred, for choosing pride over love, for missing out on knowing her nephew, for wasting 30 years being bitter instead of being family. To Maria, Patricia said, raising her glass, who was braver than all of us, who chose right when we chose wrong, who showed us that love is worth any sacrifice. And to Brandon, who finished what she started, who gave us a second chance to get it right. To Maria, everyone echoed, and Brandon. I looked at my mother's photo and thought, we did it, Mom. We proved them wrong, proved that choosing love over money wasn't sacrifice, it was victory. That immigrant workers and construction guys and people they looked down on were worth more than they'd ever understand. That family isn't about blood or wealth or legacy. It's about choosing to love even when it costs something, even when it's hard, even when the easier path is rejection. I'd inherited $50 million, but that wasn't the real inheritance. The real inheritance was understanding what my mother and Brandon had known, that being true to yourself, choosing authenticity, valuing people over profit, that was worth more than any trust fund. That was worth dying for. That was worth living for. And now I was living it, building it, proving it every single day. That was Brandon's gift to me. Not money, truth. The truth that money without purpose is worthless, that wealth without humanity is poverty, that the richest life isn't the one with the most money, it's the one with the most love. I'd inherited a fortune, But I'd learned something worth more than fortune: how to stay human while having money, how to use wealth without letting it use you, how to be rich without becoming them. That was Brandon's legacy. That was my mother's victory. That was the real inheritance, and it was worth every second of that brutal year, worth every attack, every manipulation, every moment of feeling out of place. Because at the end I'd won something bigger than money. I'd won the chance to prove that choosing love over wealth isn't just possible. It's the only choice that matters, the only choice worth making, the only choice that lasts. Everything else, the money, the status, the legacy, it's just details, just noise, just distractions from what actually matters: being real, being human, being true. That's what the substitute heir learned. That's what Brandon had wanted me to learn, and I'd carry that knowledge the rest of my life. That was the inheritance I'd actually keep. Everything else I was giving away, because that's what love does. It gives, it shares, it helps. And in the end, that's worth more than 50 million. That's worth more than 50 billion. That's worth everything. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Maria Martinez Foundation has built 12 community centres across 5 cities, has provided housing assistance to 847 families, has funded college educations for 312 students, has employed hundreds of construction workers in building affordable housing, has become a model for how wealth can be used for actual good instead of just accumulation. Patricia runs the foundation now, retired from her other commitments to focus on this, on building something that honours her son and sister, on proving that Chens can use money for people instead of power. She's different now, softer, real, human. I still live in the guest house. It's mine. Patricia deeded it to me, said it was only right. I could afford something bigger now, could buy a mansion if I wanted. But this is enough. This is home, and I don't need more. The family gathers for Sunday dinners still, but they're different now. We talk about the foundation, about the people we're helping, about impact instead of investments. We laugh, we argue. We're actually family, real family, the kind my mother had with my father, the kind that's about love instead of legacy. I think about Brandon often, about the cousin I never met who changed my life, who sacrificed himself to prove a point, who gave me everything so I could show them what actually matters. I visit his grave sometimes, tell him what we've built, how his money is helping hundreds of families live better lives, how his mother finally understood, how the Chen family legacy isn't about wealth anymore, it's about work, real work, helping people, being human. I hope he knows wherever he is. I hope he sees that his sacrifice mattered, that his choice was right, that he won in the end, not through being rich, but through being true. That's the inheritance I'll never spend. That's the legacy I'll never forget. That's what being the substitute heir taught me. Sometimes the people who leave are the wisest ones, and sometimes the only way to truly inherit wealth is to give it away. That's what Brandon knew. That's what my mother lived, and that's what I'm spending the rest of my life proving. Love is worth more than money, always, forever, without exception. That's the real trust fund, the one that never runs out, the one that actually matters. Everything else is just noise.